Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Ask an Advocate. Today we have the Wise Women Gathering Place advocate Lacey here with us today. I'm very excited. I'm just going to give maybe like one-ish, two-ish more minutes for anybody else that may want to join, and then we can get started. And if anybody would like to ask questions in the chat or raise their hand to ask a question, feel free to do so. All right, I think we can get started then. So for everybody who joined in a little bit later, feel free to ask questions in the chat or raise your hand to ask a question if you are comfortable doing so. But I do have some questions that I'll ask of my own too. So the first question, Lacey, is an introduction to who you are. So your name, your pronouns, how long you have been with the agency, and your educational background.
Sure. My name is Lacey Barshaki. I go by she, her. I work for Wise Women Gathering Place. I have been here for a little over a year now. Prior to that, I worked for the Sexual Assault Center and I was an advocate with them for about 4 years. I went to NWTC and got a degree in human services with an AODA certificate. And then I went on and got a degree at UWGB in integrative leadership studies with a minor in human development.
Awesome, thank you for that. Well, we're not GB, but hopefully you have a good time with us today as well. The second question would be, what does a victim/survivor advocate do? And what are some examples of your job duties?
Sure. So as a victim advocate, I kind of do everything that's all encompassing. When somebody comes to us and reports that they have been a victim of a crime, right from the beginning, I can start by going out with them and supporting them while they report to law enforcement. If it's somebody who has been a victim of a sexual assault, I will go to the hospital and literally hold their hand while they're having a SANE exam. Then I can support them through the court process. So if their case ends up going legal and gets charges, then I will support them through any DA meetings that they have. I can go and sit next to them at court if they want to attend. If they don't want to attend the many court dates, then I can go on their behalf and then let them know what's happening with the court process. At Wise Women, we also, healing is a really important piece of what we do. So we provide healing vouchers for clients who may want to seek out therapy services, or we run groups specific to the Native American culture. We have a couple like Mending Broken Hearts groups that people might want to go to that's available for anybody. We have some sexual assault women's groups if people are interested in those. If people are struggling financially and maybe they need a phone, I can help get them connected to a phone or financial services in order to kind of help make the whole picture, complete the whole circle of advocacy services for somebody. It's really a catch-all. Anything that anybody needs, if I'm unable to do it myself, I will look out into the community and figure out how I can help somebody accomplish what they're looking to do.
It's amazing. You have so many resources. This is divulging from the list of questions, but I was just wondering how you heard about Wise Women Gathering Place in the first place.
When I was working for the Sexual Assault Center, we were doing the emergency like call outs for Wise Women. So they weren't in a 24/7 agency, but Sexual Assault Center was. So Wise Women contracted with Family Services in order to provide those after hour services. So I worked side by side with Wise Women while I was at Family Services. And when you're in the advocacy business, you attend a lot of trainings and conferences, and you see these people out in the community. You're doing the same events. So I was very well familiar with Wise Women while I was working at Family Services.
Thank you for that. I think you gave a really good answer about how interconnected these services can be, especially in this region. So the third question I have for you is, what are some of the joys you have experienced working as a victim and survivor advocate?
So many. You know, being able to, I'll give an example. So when I'm sitting in court with a family and it's a 10-minute court hearing and a lot can happen in that 10 minutes, and then the case is over and we go into the hallway and they look at me and they, said, what just happened? For the average layperson to try and understand, the inner workings of the court system and the legal jargon and what goes on in even just a 10-minute court case is difficult for people to understand. But I can go out into the hallway and have a 30-minute conversation with them and tell them exactly what just happened. And I think that that's very fortunate in the world that we work in. I think the majority of people don't have that. And people are very grateful for that. So even to just be able to explain to somebody, here's what's going on, here's what's happening next, as well as when you are reporting something that happened to you, that's one of the worst days probably that you've ever had, but to have somebody there to support you through that is invaluable. And a lot of these clients I have a relationship with for many years because the court process takes a long time. So we're talking, anywhere from 6 months to 2 years that I'm a part of these people's lives. And, that's, I get to know them and they get to know me and there just becomes that relationship there. And it's so helpful. People are just so grateful that they're able to have the support right from the beginning all the way to the end. I've had families invite me to their child's graduation afterwards, and after it really is on another level of support. And a lot of times people in our community, I don't even realize that these services are out there and that we provide these services until they need it. But it's every day I get up and figure out how I can, change somebody's life, really, make a difference in somebody's world. And it's extremely gratifying.
I think that's really inspiring what you said about just being invited to graduations and things like that. With graduation coming up for a lot of people, it's just beautiful to see all the support that these people have gotten over the years that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise if not to seek out these services. So it's really awesome. Okay, so my next question to you is, what are some of the challenges you have experienced working as a victim/survivor advocate?
I think the community would say, a lot of times when I'm going to like the CAC, which is the Child Advocacy Center, where that's an organization that specifically interviews children of abuse. And I'm working with families, and the mom or the dad will say to me, how do you do this? I could never do this. How are you able to do this? For me, I'm passionate about it. That's what gets me up in the morning and able to do this job every day. For me, the difficult part, to be honest with you, is the legal system. Holding somebody's hand through the justice system, trying to explain to somebody that, yes, the DA and the law enforcement believes you that this happened, but they don't have enough evidence to charge it. I spend 2 years working with a family, and then we get to the jury trial and they are found not guilty. That for me is the biggest struggle, which is part of why outreach is so important to me, because that's really half of what I do is outreach. Because any everybody in the community is a potential juror. And if the community doesn't understand sexual assault and domestic violence, then we're doing all of this for, to just end up getting a not guilty when somebody, has a trial. So that for me is what is frustrating the most.
Yeah, that can be really disheartening. I think the legal system does a good job of honestly taking away a lot of the passion that a lot of people working in this line of work can have. And I think it's a good point for you to bring up that everybody is a potential juror. Everybody is a potential juror, and that is why this work is so meaningful. That's why getting the word out there, educating the community is so meaningful, because giving a necessary need to learn these things can actually save people's lives. So it's wonderful. Okay, so the second to last question I have is, what activities do you utilize for self-care to prevent vicarious trauma?
Self-care, very important. I would say on a small basis, if I have a difficult day or something, I love to jump into my car and listen to my music, spend time with family. I think that on a longer basis, having a good therapist in place, or, have somebody to be able to process with on a long-term basis is really important. I also have a really good midwife, which is what we call here at Wise Women, our supervisors. There are midwives, and I have a really good relationship with my midwife, and I can call her, and debrief with her after I have a difficult case at any time of the day. And just, she'll listen to me, and she gives me feedback, and she provides me with advice. And having that in place is really important. And actually, while I was working at the sexual assault center, and we were on call, and we were, it was a lot of hours, and I didn't understand the importance of self-care. And so after that 4 years, I had to get out of the social work field. And I took about 3 years off before I was able to come back. And now the work that I do today I do it differently because I understand how important self-care is and boundaries. And I want to do this work for a long period of time. And so I now know, I learned from what I did at the sexual assault center, wanting to jump in all the time, and thought I was going to save the world, which is good. But in order to do that on a long-term basis, it's important to have boundaries set in place and self-care set in place, so that it is more long-term and that it is more I set my hours and I stick to those hours. That's very important for me to be able to continue to do this as my career for the rest of the time.
Well, I am so happy that you came back. Just seeing your passion for this line of work is so inspiring. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that as passionate as you are, you need to set those boundaries. And a lot of times people think that passion equals no boundaries. And so I think it's amazing that you are open about sharing your journey and sharing how you went through those 3 years of needing a break and coming back and doing it better and doing it safer. And so I really appreciate that. And Alicia Johnson also has a question, so I'll read that out. So, speaking of the legal system and considering your work with Indigenous communities, do you support victims/survivors through both tribal and non-tribal judicial systems? What are the differences between the two?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm considered a lay advocate through the tribal courts. And I am also going through a course right now. It's 6 months of schooling at the Tribal Trial College. So the tribal courts in our area does not handle domestic or sexual assaults, but they do family court. So that's also, I didn't do family court things while I was with Family Services. That is something that's new to me here at Wise Women. But of course, we have situations where somebody is, victim of domestic violence and then going through a custody case with their abuser. So I can represent them in the tribal court as their lay advocate, which allows me to speak on their behalf, which is something that Brown County doesn't allow me to do. If I'm representing a client in Brown County, I have to be quiet. But here in the tribal courts, I can speak up on their behalf like an attorney would. So I have that ability at tribal courts. When for family court. And then, like I said, I'm going through this tribal trial college that will allow me to work in the tribal courts as a guardian ad litem.
Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea. So opened a whole new door of knowledge to me. Thank you so much. I hope you, I wish you well on that 6-month journey. How far are you into it?
Halfway.
Halfway. Okay.
Got
Got
in July with a full week in Madison, actually, at the Capitol. We're actually going through mock scenarios and things for a week. And so I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, well, good luck. All right. And so I wanted to segue a little bit from the last question. So what are the differences in between working for where you worked at previously for 4 years and working with Wise Women? So are there any major differences that you can see, or similarities even?
Absolutely. One thing that I had to really wrap my brain around when it came to Wise Women is that they are not in a crisis center, which is family services was a crisis center. So you could have people were on call all day and all night, and we would respond all day and all night. And Wise Women has set business hours Monday through Thursday. And so coming to Wise Women, I really had to switch the way of thinking that, okay, this isn't crisis. You can set up a meeting with a client to meet, the next day or the next, week or whatever, versus family services. People are just walking in all the time and they're in crisis. So, and granted, people are in crisis when they come here, but it is not a crisis. We are not a crisis organization. So that is just something that I have, which has helped me in my self-care journey. Similarities, I would say, a lot of I brought a lot of the legal services that I learned from family services here to Wise Women. And I'm able to kind of take that and run with that. So I'm mainly the legal advocate here at Wise Women. I do all of the court dates and all of I go out with people when they want to report things, as well as a lot of the outreach. Because of all of my connections that I've made in the community while I was with family services, that has really done me well here at Wise Women in wanting to open doors and to have better relationships with the law enforcement. For example, this past Saturday, I went on a ride along with Hobart Lawrence law enforcement to get out there into the community and to see what the need was for advocacy services. And then I plan to take those experiences and then go to Ashwaubenon and do ride along with them, and then eventually Green Bay Police Department because right now we have a START team through family services, which is the sexual assault response team. So anytime somebody reports a sexual assault, you have an advocate that comes that will report on scene. We don't have that for domestic violence. And that is absolutely something that is in my wheelhouse in order to try and get that started. They have that in Appleton right now through the VCR, through the Victim Crime Resources in Appleton. So I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, but I would love to see that brought to Brown County. And so Wise Women is allowing me to kind of see what that would look like. So family services only dealt with sexual assault. Wise Women handles both sexual assault and domestic violence. So the domestic violence piece is new to me, but I am kind of running with it.
Oh, I'm glad you really enjoy it. I really love what you said about not reinventing the wheel. I think emulating a lot of programs that are already in place or reimagining them to make them better is a wonderful way to combat sexual assault and domestic violence. So leading into my last question, how can individuals not in a formal advocate role support victims/survivors of sexual assault?
Absolutely. The first thing I would say is to believe somebody. When they come to you, believe them. Listen to their stories. Some people want advice and some people just want you to listen. And that learning that, navigating that, who wants advice and who wants me to just listen, is just about asking the right questions. And then, if you're a community member, educating yourself on some sexual and domestic violence is really important, so that in case you ever get called as a juror, that you have all of the information, which is definitely going to set you above the average person out there on a jury. So just educating yourself about what that looks like is, I would say is really important as a community member.
Thank you for sharing that. I think the answer is very awesome. Always educating, always researching. Another question for me is, how can we support you on social medias, events that you may have, anything like that? This is the time for a shameless plug. It's okay.
I would say follow our Wise Women. We have a Facebook page, and just getting involved. We post the community events that we're having an event today, actually a drive-through, where we had our some of our women's group make jeans that we have hung outside. Just getting involved in any of the local events that the community puts out, as well as just following your local sexual assault center and domestic violence centers, and engaging in the activities that are out there.
Thank you. And I do have another question from Alicia Johnson. So statistics about the prevalence of sexual assault in Indigenous communities, particularly when Indigenous women experience SA, often highlight that perpetrators are most often not Indigenous. Is that something you see in your work? What trends, if any, do you see in serving local Indigenous communities?
Yes, absolutely. That is a trend that is a fact. What I am still trying to do in this community is even just, and part of the reason why I'm doing the ride-alongs is to be able to get out into the community so that they have a face, so that they know that I'm here to even try and get people to report. So unfortunately, this community sometimes struggles with wanting to come forward and report their crimes. So it's difficult for me to even be able to help and intervene and get involved from the beginning, unless like if the sexual assault hears about it and they're connected with the court systems, they have the SART team, so they will get called out. We don't have that relationship yet with PD, OPD, or law enforcement. So that's what I'm trying to take on right now is let law enforcement know I'm here. I also do respond to sexual and domestic violence, and to let the community know these services are available for you. If you want to report something like that, you can come here, you can speak to a legal advocate about what your options are, and we can talk about what that looks like if that's something you want to report to law enforcement or not. But I would say a big challenge is just having the community come forward to even report those crimes in the first place.
Yeah, and I agree. And I really do love what you do with showing your face and giving them a way that they can connect and see a person connected to the service. I think that's really important. And Alicia also has another question. So could you share other barriers that Indigenous victims/survivors might face in seeking support?
Yes. So one thing with, you're working in a small community, sometimes I hear this community has a lot of family members that work in the support systems. And so somebody might not want to come forward and report because their aunt works here, or they know somebody who knows somebody that works here, or they're afraid that if they come forward, the perpetrator's family might, find out about it. So I think that I would say that is definitely the biggest barrier, that it's a small community, and that sometimes works against people when they want to come and share these intimate details about what happened to them. So they will specifically choose to reach out to like family services, where they know that they have less of a chance of somebody within their tribe or their family finding out.
Thank you for that answer. I'm from the Hmong community here in Wisconsin, so I really connect with that statement that you made about how connecting or getting these services and looking at these resources can be very scary because of the small community that you have. And so another question is question that they received via DM. Can you explain more what it means to provide Native American culturally specific services? Do you have any examples?
So a lot of I would say the specifically cultural services that we provide have to do with the healing aspect. So we, if somebody comes and they want to engage in Native American healing, we offer the Mending Broken Hearts group, which is about a week-long program that is run by some of the midwives here. And there's a sweat lodge at the end. Or we have the women's group that is run, or we have our youth advocates go out into the tribal schools and work specifically with the youth. Or we have like healing kits that are available here for people if they want to come and take advantage of those. A lot of the vendors that we work with provide specifically Native American healing services such as Reiki or like massage therapies. So the vendors that we specifically work with, we work with the Baton Clinic. So we send clients over there to get healing services specifically for therapy. So yeah, I would say that a majority of those specific services are geared around the healing aspects.
Yeah, I really love that you all are very specific about healing. I think that is a wonderful thing to highlight in any like agency. So I don't have any more questions, but if anybody else has any more questions, feel free. While we're waiting for any more questions, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today, sharing a little bit more about your journey and sharing a little bit about Wise Women Gathering Place for those who don't know. I learned a lot. I feel very inspired by the passion that you just emulate throughout the screen and just in your answers. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and share what I do, a little piece of my everyday life, and talking about why I absolutely love what I do.
I love that for you. Okay, so I don't believe we have any more questions, so I am going to let you go. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. Thank you for the wonderful questions as well. And if you are interested in watching this over, sharing this on your own social medias, we will be having it posted on our YouTube page soon. Yeah, thank you.